Good morning, afternoon or evening, wherever you are. I'm Paul Clark. Welcome to my studio. So, what have I got for you lovely lot today? Well, it's part 2 in the series of our recent painting retreat at Blackadon Farm in Dartmoor, beautiful Devon, where we had just a fantastic week painting both in the studio and obviously plein air out in the beautiful countryside. There really was a wealth of wonderful things to paint. So today we're going to have a go at painting a landscape and this lovely scene high up in the moors. And if you're interested in any of our painting holidays, retreats or workshops, there's details below in the description. So come and join me and we'll paint this step by step together. And here's the reference photo, and it's the entrance up into the open moors, which is literally a 5 minutes walk from the farm. Today's materials: my paper is some Bahong Academy, it's a 300 GSM, 100% cotton, it's on a block so it won't need stretching, but as always any decent watercolour paper will do. My colours today are cadmium yellow, cobalt blue, alizarin crimson, yellow ochre, burnt umber, Payne's grey and a touch of white gouache, and 3 brushes from my range, a number 12 and number 6 round, and of course my trusty number 3 rigger. And here's the drawing, and as always a free template is available to download from my website, a link in the description below. Off we go, and I'm starting using my number 12 brush, painting wet on dry with cobalt blue, leaving big unpainted areas for those fluffy clouds. But I'm also taking clean water and softening some of the edges, and always try and paint the sky with a lighter blue towards the horizon. Next, I'm putting up in this corner some very white washes of Payne's grey. Now I remember it was a really blustery day when I took this picture, so I'm trying to get that movement in the clouds. And here I'm just blending in the cobalt blue with the Payne's grey in the bottom of these clouds here. And again softening some of the tops here with clean water. So let's paint some of these rocks while I've got the Payne's grey on my brush, and I've added in some cobalt blue. Now with these rocks there's definitely a case of some warm greys and some cool greys, so I've just added some burnt umber into that grey mix. It gives a nice variety of colour. Now for these distant hills, blue will always send things back, cool colours send things back, so I'm painting this in basically cobalt blue with just a touch of cadmium yellow. And I'm leaving that unpainted gap in the middle because I know that I've got that dark tree to come on top. Here along the bottom edge of the hill, just a touch of yellow ochre. And as normal, I'm using cadmium yellow and cobalt blue for my green mixes, and this one is a heavily biased yellow mix. And to darken the screen, I simply just add in a touch more cobalt blue. And carefully painting around the rocks. And I'm getting nice soft blends of these 2 shades of green because that first wash is still wet.
nice and dark in the foreground here. Now, while it's still damp, I'm using the sharpened wooden end of my brush and scratching in some suggestion of longer grass, but just in the foreground here. Now this looks like part of an old wall which is overgrown, so I'm getting some burnt umber in between the stones here. And again scratching in some grass effect with the end of my brush. Now I could have used my smaller brush for this, but I think keeping with your bigger brush will just help you work at that little bit faster, meaning those washes aren't drying out and you're getting some nice wet in wet effect. And putting in these dark values is really going to help the contrast and make those stones pop out. And same over here, I'm getting some warmer, browner values in between these rocks. Don't be afraid of the dark. Come in here with some nice deep values here. Really help to bring out the shape of the rocks. A few more shadows on these rocks with some Payne's Grey. And even darker value here on this big stone. And here I'm using that dry brush technique, picking up the texture of the paper. So these look like old wooden posts, so I'm just doing a quick vertical brush stroke to represent some wood grain texture. Oh, and I missed out that bit of grass in the middle there. A few more suggestions of long grass, and I definitely want some blades to come in front of this rock. Now for these details in the distance, nice and simple, just one brush stroke if you can do it. And just simple blobby shapes for these trees in the mid-distance. Now for this field here, this is going to be sort of a beigey colour made up of yellow ochre and burnt umber, but to be fair, most of it is going to sit behind the large tree when I paint it on top. Now I don't usually go back into my skies, but I'm just thinking I could do with a little bit more of a blue in this area here. So cobalt blue and just lightly tapping some colour in. Now for this dark bush just above the wall, and again same two primaries, cadmium yellow and cobalt blue, but this is very heavily blue biased. And I added in a little touch of alizarin crimson just to darken it even more. Dry brush technique here just to get that nice broken edge to this bush. End of brush again just to drag some of this wet colour down into the wash below. So now we need to let this totally dry. So it's a perfect time for a short break. And as it's 10:30 in the morning, too early for a beer, how about a nice cup of Earl Grey? Next, I'm using my number 6 round brush, and I'm using a combination of the dry brush technique and the conventional brush stroke to paint these trees on the horizon. And although I've got good photo reference, it is important to remember that it's there purely as a guide. You'll drive yourself mad if you try and copy things exactly. Next, I want to give these pile of rocks a little bit of definition, so I'm taking some Payne's Grey, and the trick to make these look like rocks is to give that shadow underneath and also to try to get some dry brush texture in. What will help if you usually consider that one face of a rock is always going to be hit by the light. And here I've just added in some burnt umber into my mix to add a little bit of warmth and variety to the shadows. And even these smaller rocks and stones need a little shadow underneath. Now, although in the reference photo these old fence posts are fairly grey looking, I'm just adding some warmth into them, brownish mix, just to make them look more wood-like. Okay, now for the big tree, which I think is a rowan tree because of all of the red berries on it. Now it's definitely got a red hue to it, so I'm starting off with a mix of alizarin crimson with a touch of burnt umber in it. This is definitely a case for using the dry brush technique, so it's all about keeping that brush flat to the paper so you pick up the texture. So I'm lightly dabbing the surface with short dabby strokes, but also thinking about that general shape of the tree with the branches coming in an upward direction. So it's worth having a few practice strokes first. It's important to get the water to paint ratio right. It doesn't want to be too wet. And you can see from the reference photo that this tree isn't totally solid, so I'm wanting plenty of gaps for light to come through. Now there are some areas of the tree which are quite solid, so I'm just using a conventional brushstroke, but I've added in some Payne's Grey into the mix just to get some nice dark shadow areas. Again here, lots of short, dabby, dry brush strokes. So I'm wanting some of these colours to blend a little bit, so I'm just giving a light spray with some clean water. And to get some more extra random texture, I'm just lightly splatting around the edges of the tree. Next, I'm lightly tapping in a few blobs of clean water into the damp wash, which will create some back runs and hopefully some interesting texture. And here I'm just softening the transition from the tree into the bush below. Next, with some Payne's Grey, a few little details in the wooden posts here. And a few more rock details. Next, I'm taking my number 6 brush and just giving a little more shape to the tree. Right, it's mixed media time and I'm using some Jackman's Titanium White Gouache, nice and gooey and thick. And I'm just making these trees look a little less solid by tapping in a few dobs of light. A few highlights on the tops of these rocks. A few little loose stones and pebbles. If you haven't got any gouache, you could always use acrylic or one of those white gel pens. Here I'm just adding in some cobalt blue watercolour to get this nice light sky blue colour, to get some more dabs of light through the tree here, just to make it look less solid. Now it's time for a little bit of pastel pencil, and this is a creamy beige colour, and I'm just putting in a few branch details. And I'm also using it for drawing in these long grasses. And now I'm using a yellow-green for a few nice long blades of grass. Next, it's time for my trusty number 3 rigger. Just the perfect brush for all these fine spindly branches and grasses. I'm also putting a little shadow underneath all of these stones. And finally I'm using some cadmium yellow, which is a very opaque colour anyway, and painting just some leafy textures on the top here. Knowing when to stop and not overwork things is the key here, so we'll stop there, and this one in about 3 hours.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did, and you'll give it a go. And you know I'm going to say it, make it your own, experiment, put your own personality into it, and of course always try and enjoy the experience. And just a quick note, by the time this video goes out, we'll actually be in Portugal, so I won't be able to reply to any of your comments this week, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't leave them. I always read them. And of course a big thanks to everyone who's left a tip, I really do appreciate it. And if all goes well, I should still have a video for you next week. So have a great week everyone, bye for now.